Hello and welcome to another interview. I got the pleasure of interviewing the hilarious comedian Sammy J, and it was such a fun interview. I hope you enjoy. So, as the host of the ABC's breakfast radio show in Melbourne, you get up really early. Is this an easy thing for you to do?
Um, Not to begin with, Michaela. It was horrific, but strangely, after like maybe 2 weeks, your body clock does adjust, and then it was actually just hard. Like I couldn't sleep in then. Like on the weekends, I'd wake up at 4 o'clock.
So I've also noticed you ride your bike to work. Is this an environmental decision, economic decision, or is it just because you think you look good in Lycra?
Well, I've never worn lycra. I make that promise. I make that. Look, it's actually where I live. It's sort of almost as quick. Certainly, when I was catching a train back home from work, it was quicker to be on a bike, which was handy.
Yeah.
I like that there's an environmental aspect as well because we all do what we can. It's also just a sneaky way of getting a bit of exercise. So it actually ticks quite a lot of boxes. But in wintertime, it's a little bit harder to do it. I'm averaging 2 or 3 times a week now.
Yeah, fair enough. So there is no doubt plastic is having a severe negative impact on the ecosystems across our planet and via connection the very health of humans. My question is, how do you think Randy feels about his impact on the environment, given that he is likely made from polyester fabrics that will eventually break down into smaller microplastics that will last for hundreds, if not thousands of years in the environment?
I would say that Randy, and I can't speak for him, he's his own person. I think he's he'd be a perfect example of reusing material. He's been going for a good 15 years now, and so it's not one of these throwaway characters that just gets reinvented and rebuilt all the time. So he's actually the most sustainable purple-headed freak I've ever had the pleasure of working with.
Absolutely. So you're very well known for political satire, commenting on community issues in a humorous way. Do you think this is how we should educate and gain the attention of others on climate change?
It is a great question, Michaela, and I'm going to sound like a bit of a wanker here because I'll go quite broad, but there's always this tension, I think, in political comedy or in social comedy and in comedy in general about, 1 second, my 4-year-old has entered the room. 1 second. I was just delivered a bit of Mandarin now. You don't need to edit this out, Michaela. This is for all the parents out there. I don't know what my 4-year-old wanted me to do with this. I'm not sure whether she was saying it was not up to her satisfaction. I'm not sure whether it was some sort of peace offering. I'll just pop it down here, and I could return to your question. So any comedian out there has to ask themselves whether they just want to make people laugh or whether they want to educate, moralize, all the rest of it. And it's a really fine line because if you want to be a preacher or if you want to, be behavioral change expert or something, then comedy's not really, I think, the most effective way of doing that. Particularly, comedians work in many respects by, or punching up, it's called. You try and hitting up at authority rather than, having a crack at people who are worse off. And it's a very tricky thing. I'm personally not a fan of using any platform I have to be telling people what they should be doing because I feel like I struggle as much as anyone else. And although there are often messages behind the pieces that I create, primarily my desire is to make people laugh and sometimes make them think, but the thinking is just as an excuse to laugh again. So that's a really long answer to your simple question. And in short, it's no. But if there can be benefits of people occasionally being, even politically speaking, thinking more reasonably about something or environmentally thinking more reasonably about something, fantastic. But it's certainly not the primary motivation for me.
So you have young children, as we just saw. Do you think about how their future will be impacted by climate change?
I do, but not enough. And I reckon that's a sense that you get even when you speak to older people and grandparents, that it's sort of this existential thing that creeps up on us. I'm at that stage of parenting, as we've just seen, which is very much in the here and now, and it is very easy to get quite miserable when I do think about it because you can sort of say, well, look, sometimes my head goes to, well, at least at the moment, the world is not as bad as it will be in 200 years environmentally, and so look, we've got it pretty good. But then you think, but hang on, what about my children? What about their children? And so on. It's the obvious point, but I think I'm in the process, Michaela, of that becoming more of a really firm thought in my head.
Yeah. So I'm 17 and I can sometimes get a little worried that people much older than me who, as you stated, have this attitude of, oh, it's going to be perfect now. In 200 years' time, that's when it's going to be the problem. And they're in a position of power and are not making good decisions environmentally, which can have negative consequences for my future. So what advice would you give to me?
What advice would I give to you?
Yeah.
Well, stop wasting time talking to comedians for one, because I'm the worst to be able to help you. But look, as with any issue that you're passionate about, and this is, I would say, the best issue to be passionate about and the most pressing and important issue to be passionate about, do exactly what you're doing, which is speaking about it in public, being passionate about it, educating yourself and then educating others. For me, that's where I sort of fall flat, because I feel like often, if it's something I feel strongly about, I feel like I don't know enough about it to be able to then necessarily get out there and lobby or make a case. But, like, we all have our own personal responsibilities. We all do our best with soft plastic recycling and all the rest of it. But in terms of bigger change, it is true that, we live in a democracy. It's a, there is a political system at work. It is hugely flawed in many respects, but it's better than a lot of the alternatives. And so we have to stay vigilant, keep that as strong as possible, and engage as much as we can. I say we, like I'd be terrified of running for parliament or something, but I have a role on radio. I try and use that responsibly. I try and raise up voices that I think are important to add to this discussion in a positive way. So my advice for you is, well, clearly keep doing what you're doing. You're clearly a switched on student who's not wasting their time in lockdown. And without knowing your own particular, I guess, goals in the area, it's nothing comes without a bit of risk. I'm just bringing it back to comedy now, but you have to put yourself out there. In my case, it was dressing up in a big suit and singing songs on a keyboard in pubs in Melbourne back in 2004. Now, that wasn't saving the planet, quite the opposite, but that was where my heart was dragging me. If yours is, then I commend you for it, dragging you towards saving the planet, a far better career path. Then I think just finding that courage to put yourself out there, say things that are going to make people feel uncomfortable, organize interviews like this and make the subjects feel uncomfortable, agitate. That is the only way things do change. Yeah. And whilst we have to keep on doing what we're doing on a small scale, the bigger question is policies and laws and structures that can ensure that improvements are made at a faster rate than they currently are.
Absolutely. So according to Wikipedia, you're an ambassador.
Well, that's your first problem. Don't go to
You're an
Wikipedia.
ambassador for Oxfam. Is this true? And if so, why do you consider Oxfam an important organisation to support?
Well, it is true. Unlike most things on Wikipedia, I got involved with Oxfam originally because they have always worked with the comedy festival, Melbourne Comedy Festival Gala. So it's always been known as the Oxfam Gala. And so they often ask comedians to do, little shout outs and fundraising things. And then Randy and I, the sustainable Randy that we referred to earlier, got to go to South Africa with Oxfam to make some videos for the gala 7 years ago. And then I went back to Papua New Guinea with them just 2 years ago. And so I'm more of a sort of in an ambassador role now. Look, I support, broadly speaking, I really support Oxfam's work. It's hard not to, if you're interested in, or if you have a view that poverty should be eliminated, which I can't see how anyone would not have that view. Oxfam, do some incredibly important work in that area. It's practical work. They partner with different organisations all around the world. It's been a really tough time for charities in general, particularly for Oxfam this year, with funding drying up and so on. So it's a lot of uncharted territory at the moment. But look, for me, it's back to that sense that by working with Oxfam, I get to switch into an organisation who know far more than I do, who do far better work than I will ever do. But if I've got some sort of platform or profile, even just to a niche comedy crowd, I can use that to raise awareness. And it feels like it's a very easy thing for me to do. So it's sort of the least I can do, but it's really satisfying to occasionally not think about yourself for more than 10 minutes.
Yeah. So if you were made president of the world, what would be your first action?
You mean when I'm made?
What would be your first action, and what would be one thing you would change to improve humanity?
Oh, that's a full-on question. Man, pressure on me. Remind me, what's the one thing? What's the first law? Did you say?
What would be your first action? And what
Yep.
would be one thing you would do to change to improve humanity?
Gosh, and did you say president of the world?
President of the world, the whole world.
Okay. Okay, well, my first action will be to get some damn good bodyguards because I suspect there'd be some people who would not be happy with my ascension to that particular role, or indeed the creation of a world president. Do you know what? Just staying on the Oxfam thing, I think when you look at the figures about how we could eliminate extreme poverty in the world, it is so utterly achievable. Like I don't have figures right here in my head, but if you read a book like The Life You Can Save by Peter Singer, they make the case that if only the top 1% of income earners and stuff gave this amount of money and so on, or if countries just adjusted their aid budgets in this tiny degree, then children dying from starvation would not happen. It's mind-blowing to think that this could change with more political will, and nor am I trying to wash my hands of it because we're all involved, but I think, charitable aid towards those, in extreme poverty would be the thing that I would want to address first and foremost.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And thankfully, I'll never have to. It's a brief far outside my own.
Yeah, very big issue, but
Yeah.
so let's do some name association. So I'm going to say some names, and I just want you to say the first words that come to mind when you hear the name.
Okay.
Okay, Donald Trump.
Successful.
The Phantom.
The ultimate.
Adam Hills.
Friend.
David Attenborough.
Nature.
Elmo.
Fuzzy.
So my last question to you is, what does the future have in store for Sammy J?
Well, I can answer that confidently. In about 10 seconds, I'm going to turn this interview on its head and ask you some questions, Michaela. I can confidently predict that is the case. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay, Michaela. When you become president of the world, which I think we can establish is far more likely than happening to me, what would be the first law that you passed?
Big question.
Yeah. I freaked out as well. It's hard, isn't it? It's really hard.
There's so many problems. I don't want to pick all of them.
Got to pick one. You did it to me.
I'd probably focus on environmental law to help make the climate change, like try and solve the problem. Not that you can now, we can just slow it down. But that would be my focus, is getting the world more sustainable, because I think once you do that, all other problems fix themselves, because people who are in poverty from climate change and from the natural disasters won't be. People who are homeless and who are refugees from their countries due to climate change, they won't be. And I think it's a core focus that solves a lot of problems.
I like it. I vote for that. Do you feel like you are alone or in the minority of, students your age, even at school, for whom this is a pressing issue? Because, or is it the alternative that actually you're far more switched on and energized than older people these days?
I actually think that most people my age, it is something that they're concerned about. Like, they constantly got it somewhere in their head. A lot of people tackle it in different ways and think about it in different ways. Some people suppress it and ignore it. Some people, like me, try to make a difference, I guess. But I think it is something that is very conscious in students' minds and something that we do worry about.
Well, I'm glad that a mind like yours is the one worrying about it. I'm glad that you're engaging with it. So I won't flip the tables anymore. You've answered my questions to my satisfaction. Okay.
Thank you. So thank you so much for chatting with me. It was so much fun getting to talk to you.
No worries. Real pleasure to chat. Thanks so much.